So I was meditating. I'm sorry. Can I? All right. Are we good with the camera? Everything? All right. Ready? All right. Okay. All right. So I was meditating on this week about how we're always going through some type of struggle in this world. As soon as we get rid of one comes again. And humans have spent so much of their time inventing medicines and inventing machines to try to make our lives easier. I have a good friend of mine who's also really into history. So we'll talk about how things used to be back in the day before modern conveniences. And one of the things one of my friends brought up is, back in the day, you didn't have so many people dying of cancer. Now it's like every time you turn around, somebody's got cancer. Either you've had it or you know somebody that's had it. How many of you know somebody that's had cancer or had it yourself? Almost every single person in this room. And so she was bringing up that, back in the day, you didn't have so many people getting cancer and dying because we have so many toxins and air pollution in our environment. And she was saying from cars and from factories and from other things. But then I was thinking about it. And, we invented, take something like cars. We invented cars to stop another problem. Before, it took months to go somewhere. Like, if you were from New York, say back in the day, you came to the U.S. in the 1800s, or your ancestor probably went through this, and you guys decided you were going to go out to California to try and find gold like they did back in the day, it would take you months to get there. Chances are you might not see some of your family members again. I mean, moving across the country might mean like goodbye because it took so long to get back and forth. And on top of that, what did you have to deal with? There were people along the way that would try to rob you, steal from you. So many dangers. I was looking it up, and with horse and buggy, people could probably go about a day. Oh. In fact, they have this one hill in Ireland. It's called the 20-minute hill because back in the day, it took 20 minutes to get up there with a cart and off. Nowadays, it takes a few seconds to get out there in a car. So we can see how things have changed. So, in fact, actually, the original meaning of the honeymoon, now couples go on honeymoon after they get married. It's like a vacation. But did you know originally the honeymoon was to spend time to go visit relatives that couldn't come to your wedding because they lived too far away? So you go and you visit relatives and they bring gifts and stuff. And that might be the first and only time they ever see your spouse. But nowadays, we invented this car to cover more distance in a short amount of time. And we've invented planes to cross the ocean. So now we can go all over the world to visit friends and family and get there in a much shorter amount of time. But now what do? We come up with other excuses as to why we can't go. It's something like, I can't come see you because I can't get off work this week. My family, we used to meet up every 4th of July. And now my brother's like, I can't come anymore because I got one kid in competitive gymnastics and another kid in competitive baseball, which is possible because we have this car for transportation, because when you do that, you have to travel. And then he's like, now I have to work to pay the insurance, pay the gas on the car that I originally got, so my life could be easier so I could go visit friends and family and all that. But now I have all these excuses as to why I can't go. And so one solution made has now created another problem. Also now they're trying to come up with these electric cars to replace gas cars, because fossil fuels, there's so many limited ones in the earth and we're running out of fuel. So okay, let's make everything electric so it's better for the environment. To make these cars electric, you've got to mine something out of the earth for the battery. I can't remember what this substance is called, but lithium? Yeah, but even that is limited. So in a few hundred years, or maybe less than that, you're going to have another problem. Cell phones. How many of you guys got one of these? Everybody's got one of these. We got it to make our lives easier to communicate. Back in the day, if you called somebody at home and you didn't get them, that was it. The rule used to be 3-4 rings and hang up because that meant they weren't home, right? And and now I remember when I was a kid, waiting till 9 o'clock at night to call someone because that's when things were free. Now everybody's got unlimited minutes. Nobody wants to talk. Why are you calling me? Text me. And so now we're carrying around these things in our pockets all day. And there's even studies showing that this radiation from these things are causing cancer. Gym subscriptions. Because now with all of our modern conveniences, we sit down too much. So now we need to pay some company to get into shape. So we're done. Like back in the day, people stayed in shape because, you had to go wash your clothes. You had to go outside. You had to work in the land. My grandmother had this little thing over her in the corner. It looked like this bowl thing with like a stick coming out of it. And it was there ever since I was a kid. So finally one day I asked her, Granny, what's that for? And she goes, oh, that's how I used to make butter. And you would stay in shape because you would churn it, and that would keep you fit. But now, since we have all these modern conveniences, what's the other problem? Now we got obesity. Now we're sitting too much. Now we have to pay a gym subscription so that we can stay fit. So we can see through this that each convenience has created another problem. Before cancer, people died of infections because we didn't have antibiotics. So it was a high probability that an infection would kill you off more than anything. And then we invented antibiotics. And then now we're becoming antibiotic resistant. In the 1920s, the flu came along, and people didn't know what to do with that. Now we've gotten better at treating the flu. Now COVID's come along. So we're coming up with all these solutions to stop our miseries. But another misery is coming on top of that. And this is because this material world is known as dukkhalam. It has these 3 miseries in it. Miseries of the mind, miseries of the body, miseries of the mind and body, they go together as one. And miseries of the other living entities, and miseries that we get from natural disturbances. How many of you are from small town? Small towns, people are always in your business, right? They know what's going on. I know I'm from a small town myself. So people are very nosy, can't keep a secret. They know who you've been with, who you're going with, everything like that. It's all talked about in church right before the sermon. I'm being dead serious. Go into any Baptist church on Sunday right before the sermon starts. Listen to what people are talking about. In the Catholic Church, I think people are a little more quiet, but go, you'll see what I'm talking about. So anyway, in these small towns, you have these people that are in your business, so you got miseries from other living entities. So, but then these small towns then become bigger cities. What happens? Now we don't know our neighbors. Now I'm lonely. Now I'm depressed. I don't have a community to look after me. One of the benefits of the small town is that we got people to help us out. And so they actually did a study that showed, they did it back in the 1960s, and then they did it again in 2000 something. And they asked people, how many friends or how many people do you have in your life that you could call at any time of the day if you had an emergency? In 1960, average person said at least 5 people, any time of the day. That's 3 o'clock and whatever. And then they did this again in the 2000s. The average was 1 or 0. Some people had nobody they knew that they could call in the event of an emergency. So you can see that as a society, we're becoming more lonely. We're becoming more depressed. So this is miseries of the mind. In California, now I just heard about some landslides that are going on there. Houses are being literally swept off the foundation. I saw on the news that one guy said that his father actually had saved his whole entire life, or at least the whole entire life of the son. The son was, I guess, a teenager now, so that he could live in this one area. I can't remember what that area is. Palo Alto?
Palos Verdes.
Palos Verdes, yeah. So he had saved a bunch of money because he wanted to live in this exact spot, and now the very house that he bought is being swept away. So this is miseries of natural disturbances. So this place, in this material world, we always have one going on after the other. Sometimes when we're feeling happy, we're feeling that everything is good, That is because the miseries aren't hitting us as hard, so we're not being as affected by them. Like, say, for example, you're with your family and you think, okay, we're going to go out today, but then you see it's raining. So you're like, okay, that kind of sucks, but then you just stay inside. So that misery is not hitting you quite as hard, but then sometimes they hit you even harder. You get some health challenge, or you get into some accident or something, or like in California, your house starts to slide off its very foundation. So they're all the time going on, and we're all the time trying to make some sort of adjustment so that we suffer less. But these things are called kleshas. However, so what is the solution that we have to get out of this? And in the first canto, there's a sage called Narada. I mean, you've heard of Narada Muni. Some of you haven't heard of Narada Muni, but anyway, he's one of our great sages in the Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam is one of our literatures, and it contains everything you need to know about spiritual life, who we are, and who Krishna is, and what we're supposed to be doing in this world. Everything you need to know is in this literature. So one time, Narada Muni, he went to visit one of his disciples, Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva is the author of all the Vedic literatures. So after Vyasadeva had written down all these Vedic literatures, he became a little bit morose, sad. And he was trying to figure out the cause of his sadness. And so his guru, Narada Muni, comes to him and says, are you happy with what you've done? Teaching people to identify with the mind and identify with the body. Because Vyas had written everything down that people needed to do to live a pious life. But he hadn't made the goal very clear of how to get truly free of these miseries. So, of course, he had written down all the Vedas, and then devotional service was there because Mahabharata was there, and Bhagavad Gita is in Mahabharata, but it wasn't totally clear. People were getting lost because there was a lot in there about how to get one's material desires fulfilled by worship of various devas or worship of various, we say demigods in English. It was told how to get to heavenly planets, other realms. And so people were kind of getting lost in all this. So, hold on one second. My mouth is drying out. So they didn't know the goal. Yesterday was Ganesh Dasi. And many, many people came into the boutique yesterday and they asked me for clay Ganeshas, that dissolve in the water. Apparently you're supposed to worship Ganesh and then put it back into the water. So many people will come and they'll worship Ganesh to get rid of obstacles because he's the obstacle remover. But the thing is, if you're worshiping Ganesh for removal of material obstacles, he might get rid of one klesha for you, but then another one will come. Okay, now I've started this business that I wanted to start. Ganesh has removed this obstacle, and I got the loan that I needed to get, and the business is going, but then boom, another klesha. Misery of the mind, now I'm in anxiety. Because almost everybody I know that starts a business ends up in some type of anxiety. Okay, how am I going to be able to maintain it? You're laughing, you know this. How am I going to be able to afford this? How am I going to be able to get the supply? How do I deal with these other people that are constantly complaining? How do I not get bad reviews? So people come, some people will worship Ganesh for the removal of these obstacles. But you might remove one obstacle, but then yet another one will come. So, in other words, Narada Muni, he's telling here, how do we actually get rid of all these? And so, Narada Muni speaks this very sweet verse, Vyasadeva. Now I have to hold the phone closer to me because my screen's cracked. Etam sam suchitam brahmas tapatraya chichiksitam yadishpare bhagavati karma brahmani bhavitam. And he says to Vyas, O Brahmana Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. So these miseries hit us because oftentimes, we're attached to the mind, we're attached to the body, and we're attached to our activities. We want a certain result. We want our body to be in perfect shape. We want our mind to be in perfect shape. And we're doing it oftentimes for our own personal gratification. So Arjuna had this dilemma in Bhagavad Gita. And his dilemma was to fight or not to fight. He got confused. Very often we get confused in this world. Do I do this or do I not do this? And so we can relate to this a little bit. Maybe not on the scale of Arjuna, but on a smaller scale. See, Arjuna, he had all of his family members out there on the battlefield, ones that he loved very dearly. He had his gurus out there. He had his brothers out there. He had his, all of his uncles and everything, all of his cousins. They were out on this battlefield. And it was like a family war. And one side was hell-bent on this war. No matter what, we're going to fight. So Arjuna was part of the Pandavas, and the Pandavas were the rightful heirs to the kingdom. But the throne had been usurped from them by their cousin, Duryodhana. And Duryodhana would not compromise with them. The Pandavas were telling them, just give us a little bit of land. You can keep the kingdom, just give us 5 villages. No, I won't give you anything. He was very, very greedy. And he tried in various ways to kill the Pandavas, to get rid of them once and for all. And so after doing everything that they could do, they realized there's no option. We have to go to war. Duryodhana will not stop until we're dead. So Arjuna, he's out there on the battlefield. Krishna is taking the job of driving his chariots. And Arjuna gets out on the battlefield and he sees, his relatives out there and he's confused. Oh my gosh, what do I do? Do I fight or not fight? And if I fight, all these things are going to happen. I'll get sin for killing my gurus. Women will be left unprotected. What's the point of even having a kingdom anyway if some of my relatives die and they won't be there to enjoy it with me? He's perplexed like this. Because Prabhupada says in one purport, he's has affection for his family members and he doesn't want to kill them, but at the same time, he knows that it's his duty as a Kshatriya to fight. So he's undergoing a lot of mental misery right now. And then he gets to the point where he says to Krishna, Karpanya dosho upatasva baba, prichami cham dharma samudachita, yastrayasham nishitam bruhitame, shishastiham sadimam tvam papanam. He says, I'm confused about my duty, and I don't know what to do. And because of this miserly weakness. So I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. And so there's a lot of instructions in the Bhagavad Gita, but what it comes down to over and over again is Krishna telling Arjuna, fight, do your duty as a service to me. Because Krishna here, he saw the whole entire picture. Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita, past, present, and future, I know. So Krishna could see how everything was supposed to go down. He wanted to reestablish the Pandavas as the rightful rulers. But at the same time, he was trying to relieve the earth of the burden of all the demonic kings that had come and exploited the earth. So Krishna had a whole plan involved. So he tells Arjuna, just fight and just leave the result up to me. So in this purport here, Prabhupada's telling people, whatever your duty is, just do it for Krishna. Whether you are a businessman, go be a businessman and spend money for Krishna consciousness, for propagating Krishna consciousness. Whether if you are a politician, try to promote God consciousness within the world. We all have some type of duty to perform. But if we change our consciousness and we perform this duty to try to please Krishna and not for ourselves, then it relieves us of a lot of anxiety. Because we understand in this moment, okay, I'm not the controller. I can't, but I know the person who can. So therefore, let me work for his satisfaction. And trust me, you get rid of a lot of anxiety when you're in this consciousness. I remember being a student and having so many exams and all this. And I would, I would do my sadhana every day. I would read a little bit every day and say, okay, Krishna, I'm going to do my best. And whatever the result is, that's up to you. And I did so much better on my test because I went in there and I had less anxiety. And I was able to be peaceful and I was able to be calm and tranquil. And then I was able to answer things a lot better. And so when one is in Krishna consciousness, it actually relieves us of the miseries that come from these kleshas. Because even if, some natural disaster comes, the devotee knows, okay, Krishna will take care of me. There will be some other arrangements. Krishna will give us everything we need. I remember one time, when we had this fire, this fire, and some of the devotees were like, "Don't worry, it'll be okay. Krishna will provide." And now things are up and running again. And then we had that one fire in the bathroom, and we're like, I was thinking, oh my God, like how is this gonna work out now? There was just a fire, just a year before. Now there's another fire, but yet the bathroom's fixed, and it's working just fine. So for one who's endeavoring in Krishna consciousness, Krishna provides. So there's no need for this type of anxiety. But this takes practice because we're so accustomed to thinking that I can control the result of something. If I just tweak things this way, if I just tweak things that way, then I'll actually get rid of all my miseries. And so also on top of that, we become accustomed to accepting temporary material happiness as complete happiness. Under the illusion of this material nature, we think this little bit of happiness we're getting when the kleshas aren't hitting us so hard is, the best that it's ever going to get. But no, the Jiva soul is Satchit Ananda. We're meant to experience happiness on a much greater level. So this takes time to change our consciousness. Just to give an example, yesterday I had horrible, horrible ear pain. It started out of nowhere. And I went to Walmart with Ganga Prem and I got some eardrops, put some eardrops in there, try to loosen up the wax. Nothing was helping. And it was awful. So finally I went to an urgent care, which I hate to do in the afternoon because they're always going to be crowded. But I prayed to Krishna, what should I do in this situation? And I just knew something said, go to the urgent care. I went to the urgent care. Nobody was there at 4:00 in the afternoon. Never happens. Go into the urgent care, and I'm thinking, oh my God, if I have to get an antibiotic, all the pharmacies are closed. And the lady at the counter is like, oh, this one's open 24 hours. Okay, check. And then I go in there, and the doctor's like, it might be an infection, but let me look in there. And he looks in my ear, and he says, I can't see inside your ear. It's so blocked. I can't even tell if there's anything wrong with it. And so he said, let's try to get that out. So they bring in some eardrops. They have me lay down for about 10 minutes, put some stuff into my ear. And then the next thing I know, the nurse comes in with this big, long tube. And I'm like, oh my God. And she sticks this in my ear. And she's like, all right, I'm going to blast them. It's like warm water, and there was something else in there. And she's like, I want you to hold this container up to your ear. And she starts blasting the water in there. And I can feel stuff breaking up in my ear and coming out. And then it fills up, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot of wax. She dumps it, and then she comes back. Whoa, that is a lot of wax. She dumps it, and then she goes back. And I swear, then the last time there was even more wax. I had no idea this much wax could get in one ear. And but I lifted my head up, and all of a sudden I could hear things I couldn't hear before. I had become so accustomed, I didn't even realize that I was suffering, that I had that limited hearing. And then she went out, she closed the door, and she told the doctor, that was a lot of wax in that ear. I could hear it through the door. And then the doctor comes in and he looks and he goes, your ear's normal. But that's what we're like on a bigger scale. We've accepted this temporary material happiness as the best that there is. when actually no, there's meant to be something more. We're meant to experience happiness on a much higher level. So therefore, there's a process here. And it's described in the Shastras that our most important processes are hearing and chanting. And out of those two, hearing is the most important. So Srimad Bhagavatam also explains, simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. Who wants the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness out of their life? All right, you hear Srimad Bhagavatam. There you go. There's a cure. And it works. And then to top that off, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, and I won't read the Sanskrit for sake of time, but for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, which comes about through engaging our activities for Krishna and through giving oral reception, you put these two things together, very, very powerful. So for one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. And such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. Actually is serious about getting rid of this adhyatmika, adhibodhika, adhidaivika, these three miseries that are always pounding us. Then one should take to Krishna consciousness by just trying to engage their activities in the service of Krishna and trying to hear a little bit the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and it'll change one's life. It only takes a little bit. Just start somewhere. It's very, very sweet. And I'm out of time, so thank you. Hare Krishna. Vancha Kalpa Vishwa.